Hi guys, it's Kirsty. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about cheating OCD. So this is a theme where we find ourselves particularly fixated on the idea of whether or not we have cheated or will cheat on our partners. So it's kind of almost a type of relationship OCD. So it's kind of under that umbrella because some of the fears related are quite similar. But anyway, before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So as we've said in other videos, relationship OCD itself could be centered around any relationship, not just romantic relationships. It could be the relationship with your friends, family, children, or anything. You could even find yourself having kind of relationship OCD related intrusive thoughts about your dog, for example. Whereas cheating, kind of the fears of cheating and a fixation on, whether you might cheat or whether you did cheat or something, that is specifically around behaviour within a romantic relationship. So I'll be focusing on when I refer to ROCD, relationship OCD in this video, it will be in relation to romantic relationships because that's where the idea of cheating could fall into. Now, as we know, we've discussed in other videos, relationship OCD can be, stuck on any thought related to our relationship, rightness with our partner. It could be fixated on a certain attribute of our partner, or it could be fixated on a certain sort of, it could be intelligence, whether you align in terms of intelligence or sense of humour or any aspect of your relationship. And when we talk about cheating OCD, this is where we have a fear of either cheating on our partner or having cheated on our partner. So firstly, I'll start off by talking about some of the common compulsions that people may find themselves engaging in if they are struggling with obsessions around cheating on their partner. What I will say before I go into this is that this list of compulsions is not limited to what I'm about to mention. There could be more. So it could be asking your partner for reassurance that you will never cheat and, saying, oh, I'll never cheat. Or it could be if somebody is, having constant thoughts of whether they will cheat on their partner, they might Google, will I cheat on my partner? Why am I thinking about this? Or they may test themselves for attraction to other people other than their partner mentally. So they might deliberately look at pictures or try and conjure up mental images of another person to assess for attraction, to kind of check whether or not they would want to, cheat on their partner with that person. Or it might be avoidance behaviours. So they may avoid a particular person, either in the flesh, or avoid looking at any social media or anything revolving around that can kind of trigger thoughts of that person at all, because that then maybe brings up the obsessions around whether they will cheat. They might constantly ask friends or family if they have similar thoughts or something like that. They may try and ruminate and analyze why they're having these thoughts. And in addition to that kind of idea of will I cheat, there's also, it might be somebody, people can quite commonly probably find themselves having obsessions over, did I cheat? So it's almost a little bit, it might be a bit of a false memory situation. So, with false memories or like even real events, it might be, trying to work out, an event happened, but you're trying to work out exactly what happened in that event so you could prove to yourself that it didn't involve you cheating. Either way, their sort of compulsions can be quite similar. So going over memories in your mind, analysing, picking it apart to try and see what actually happened. Or it might be asking people who might have been around when you sort of have the false memory of, or whether the real event took place, asking them to constantly remind you of what did and didn't happen. It can be confessing to your partner that you're afraid that you cheated, even though you think you might not have done, but you feel like you can't tolerate the uncertainty without, you just feel so guilty, it has to just come out. Or it could be you know, if you're trying to work out whether or not you did cheat, it could be looking at social media of other people who are around on that event to try and, you know, see if it triggers any memories or anything like that. So those are just some of the kind of common compulsions that people may find themselves doing if they are having obsessions about cheating on their partner. And that could be, as I said, whether it's fear of that you're going to cheat on your partner or the fear that you have cheated on your partner. And as I said, those compulsions that people might do if they have the fear that they have cheated on their partner, there's quite a lot of crossover with this kind of compulsions that people may find themselves doing with real event OCD or false memory OCD, because it's essentially trying to remember, trying to constantly, you know, remind yourself. But of course, the more you do that, the more you're feeding into the doubt, and the more you're going to want the reassurance and, you know, want to perform the compulsions to get that kind of momentary feeling of peace and comfort. So like whether it's the fear of whether you will cheat or have cheated, obviously, as with all themes of OCD, you know, a big part here is sitting with the discomfort and tolerating the uncertainty. You know, you could consider yourself to be the most faithful person in the world, but you can never have 100% certainty over what might happen in the future. It's simply not possible. Even if it's like a 1 in 10 million chance, you just never know, because you don't know what your perspective will be at that point. And this isn't me saying, well, maybe you will cheat. I'm not necessarily saying, I'm just saying it might be a very, very small chance, but there's never any certainty over anything apart from the fact that, unfortunately, at some point we will all pass away. That is the only certainty we do have in life. So in order to help us better tolerate, you know, the uncertainty of whether we might cheat on our partner, of whether we have cheated on our partner, so that we can live life on our own terms and put it down to OCD rather than kind of continuously feeding into the doubting loop and performing compulsions, it can be helpful to bring the anxiety down surrounding this topic. And there are a number of different ways that you can do this. So firstly, what I do want to stress is that I'm not condoning cheating. You know, this is not me saying that you want to work towards not caring about whether you did or you didn't or anything like that. This is more removing the layer of anxiety that we would associate with such an action. You know, you can still strongly, you know, still be against the act of cheating, still strongly strive to be a faithful partner, and you can still, you know, have a strong preference to be a certain way. But what it can be helpful to work towards is seeing that you don't have to write yourself off as a human being if you did make a mistake in the moment. So any human being is capable of making mistakes. This is the way we were made. So, you know, if you can kind of see that sometimes maybe if people, what can help with this perspective to practice getting to the point where you can strongly feel that you wouldn't write yourself as a human off as a human being if you did make this mistake. Rather, you might think, oh, you know, feel a bit low about yourself and that you would have preferred to have behaved better and strongly strive to behave better in the future, but you're not writing yourself off as a human being. You know, you're taking responsibility, you're working towards getting to the point where you would take responsibility, of course, for anything that you did, you know, wrongdoing to others, but you're not saying that you're a completely awful human being if you did make this mistake. And that's the thing that can help remove some of, like, help to reduce the anxious response that we might have in response to the thoughts about, you know, cheating or anything like that. So essentially, this is where, in order to bring down the anxious response to allow us to better tolerate the uncertainty, we want to work on disputing whatever irrational beliefs we have that are fueling the anxiety. So some of these irrational beliefs might be, it would be awful if I cheated because I couldn't bear to lose my relationship. So that's a common fear with relationship OCD or anything related to our romantic relationships, that we're going to lose that person. And you can look at disputing this. Okay, there are other videos on this channel, by the way, that go further in depth about disputing, so I recommend checking them out. But you might begin by disputing this irrational belief that it would be awful, you couldn't bear the idea of losing your partner to you strongly would prefer to keep your relationship and be a good partner to your partner, but you did obviously, you lived a certain amount of years and you found some happiness in those years prior to meeting your partner, so you could get there again. And also, looking at other like relationship breakups that other people have had or that you've had in the past, you can see quite clearly that the people do eventually get past this, and eventually the sadness does start to dissipate, and those people and you can find happiness again. So that's one of the things. Another thing is, maybe an irrational belief that you couldn't stand, the guilt, you just couldn't live with yourself. If you did something, you just feel like a horrible person. And this is what I said about not writing yourself off as, you want to get to a point where you wouldn't feel like you would have to write yourself off as a human being for making a mistake, because you could be capable of good and bad acts. So cheating, yeah, that's bad. That's not good for your relationship. Of course you don't want to do that. But then there might have been many other things that you've done in your past that are really, really nice. And not that they undo this bad act. You can't necessarily undo the hurt that you do to other people, but you don't necessarily need to judge yourself wholly on one act and say that you're a terrible person, because that's irrational, because you've also done good acts too. You could just see yourself as a human being who's capable of acts that are both good and bad. And if you do something that doesn't work in your own best favor, you can continue to try to behave in a more productive and helpful way for yourself and your relationships going forward, and learn from those mistakes. And also it helps to shift perspective over these things when you look at, sometimes things aren't always black and white, why some people, do things in relationships as well. And this is potentially quite triggering. So what I'm saying is, and I'm not necessarily saying that, we don't want to be saying this is the case for us or whatever, but there are sometimes people might cheat in a relationship, like in certain circumstances. Maybe they're in an unhappy relationship or something, and they might do it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make them an awful human being. And this is not like, what I would say strongly here is, don't go away and analyze if you're in an unhappy relationship, because obviously if you are somebody who suffers from relationship OCD, it can be very easy to get kind of driven into that. But what I'm saying is that sometimes there's reason behind the things that people do, and that's part of not judging somebody in their entirety by one not very honest act, one hurtful, very, very hurtful act, because maybe there's a reason behind somebody doing it, or and as I said, that person's probably done 100 other really good acts. So what I'm saying is trying to view it with kind of a balanced and more open view, that you wouldn't necessarily write somebody else off 100% for doing it if you understood their situation. So why can't you apply that same level of compassion for yourself? And again, I do want to continuously, strongly reiterate the fact that this doesn't mean that, by working on this acceptance, unconditional self-acceptance here, or being able to accept the consequence if you were doing it. This is not saying that you would no longer care or anything like that, or that you're no, oh, I do what I want because I unconditionally accept myself. That is not what unconditional self-acceptance is. It's not behaving in a way like without conscience or anything like that, but it's, it's continuously striving to be the person, to behave in a way that you would want to behave, but it's also not writing yourself off 100%, saying that you're completely worthless because of one act maybe that you've done, which wasn't exactly what you would have liked to have done. I do think that's very important for me to stress that point, because I think it's one of the common misunderstandings about unconditional self-acceptance, that people use it maybe as an excuse to justify, not acting maybe in a way that they might consider kind or anything like that, or being able to justify sort of bad behavior. Essentially, it is not that. It is being able to say, I'm a human being who is capable of making mistakes. I have, you know, obviously we have standards that we want to live by, but it's saying that if from time to time I fall short of that standard despite my best effort, I will still, you know, try my very best to give myself compassion, pick myself back up after that, rather than sort of like beating myself up constantly, saying I'm an awful person or anything like that. Essentially adding on extra layers of feeling crap about yourself onto the situation, when actually what would be more helpful and help you to kind of strive towards behaving more in a way that you'd want to behave is if you are able to kind of think about it in a more sort of slow things down mentally and see that you're capable of making mistakes and how can you do it better next time. So I hope this video has been helpful in terms of talking about some of the common compulsions that you may find yourself doing if you're suffering from cheating OCD. And I'm talking about this from my own research and some of my own experiences when I was at my worst with my OCD. So I'm, you know, drawing upon some of my compulsive researching actually, back when my OCD was at its worst. And then obviously I moved on to talking about, you know, maybe some of the fears that are involved that might be fueling the obsessions around cheating, and how you could start looking at tackling them and working on perspective shifts to help you become less stuck on this particular theme. So I hope this video has been helpful, and thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.